Discover the amazing legacy, how one warrior's unexpected journey transformed history forever. Josh wiped the sweat from his brow, his hands rough against the frail paper of an old document he had unearthed from the dust-choked vault of the university archives. A faded name caught his eye, a name he had only seen in family stories: his great-great-grandfather, a warrior who fought with honor and bravery, a man whose legacy was supposed to flow through his veins. Here, lost in the shadows of neglected treasures, he had stumbled upon history far grander than he ever expected. But how could he, a janitor stuck in the mundane grunge of day-to-day life, rise to honor that legacy? The weight of his responsibilities caring for his sick mother loomed large, a storm cloud overshadowing every dream he tried to nurse back to life. As Josh meticulously sifted through the archives, his heart danced between desire and despair. He envisioned a life beyond the sterile campus halls, a life where he could contribute to academia, where people would recognize his brilliance instead of dismissing him as just another laborer. But such dreams were tangled with his obligations. Each payday brought with it bills and medication for his mother, chaining him to the very role that others assumed defined him. "You're lucky to have a job, kid," echoed the condescending words of professors, a mantra that turned his passion into an aching doubt. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With newfound determination, Josh kept digging, clutching tightly to the fragile documents that could shape the future. One paper revealed a scientific breakthrough that could advance medicine in ways unimaginable. History was clamoring to be rewritten, but as he imagined presenting his findings to the faculty, a lump constricted in his throat. What if they dismissed him outright? What if standing tall meant standing alone? A wave of nausea crashed over him thinking of their scrutinizing eyes, the disdain with which they regarded his blue uniform, a glaring reminder of his status as a janitor, barely worthy of their attention. Time slowed when he finally mustered the courage to confront the academic elite. The energy in the room crackled with tension. He felt the judgment envelop him, their flippant comments cutting deeper than he wanted to admit. "What do you know? You clean floors." Anguish simmered within his chest, a tempest of anger and self-doubt battling against his longing to be taken seriously. And just as he thought he'd never confront them again, a gut-wrenching revelation flooded his mind: a betrayal tied to his ancestor, a dark stain on the noble legacy he admired. He envisioned raising his head, daring them to peer beyond the janitor's uniform, risking being crushed by their laughter or embraced by their acknowledgement. What if, like his ancestor before him, he chose to honor his truth, even if it meant tearing his world apart? Just as the moment's pressure reached its peak, the air thickened with the weight of his indecision. Would he forge ahead, risking everything for the chance to reclaim his family name, or would he retreat into the shadows of the archives, remaining the invisible man shoveling his dreams into the grave of obligation? The moment hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Josh stood at the metaphorical crossroads of his life, where the promise of legacy rubbed against the harsh reality of his daily existence. Sweat trickled down his brow, blurring the words on the page before him. Was he not worthy of this moment, or was it time to challenge the constraints of his role? Doubt gnawed at him as he grappled with the tension lightening up and down his spine. He took a deep breath, anchored by the knowledge that this was not just about him, it was about the warrior who had fought in noble service, who had battled for truth and honor, qualities he craved in his own life. Emerging from the dust of history was not just a chance at personal triumph, it was a reclamation of a past so often buried under the weight of his present. In that moment of clarity, Josh realized that he couldn't turn away. He needed to gather the remnants of his courage and enter the fray. Each interaction with the academic elite became less about their judgment and more about the truths they would discover when they looked beyond his blue uniform. It could be a bridge, a connection between past and present, between the legacy of a warrior and the potential of his own intellect. Motivated, he immersed himself in the archives again, attempting to absorb all the nuances of his great-great-grandfather's life. The more he learned, the more steadfast he became in understanding that legacy is not simply inherited, it is fought for, earned, and made real through acts of courage in the face of adversity. He began drawing parallels between the battles his ancestor fought and his own struggle to articulate his journey, feigning a sense of confidence through sheer resolve and learned insight. As the days unfolded, he pieced together a compelling narrative identifying the breakthroughs in science his ancestor had advocated for, as they served as a precursor to his own work. He burned to reach out and connect, to speak with professors who had long since reduced him to a janitor in their eyes. He began drafting a proposal, each word spitting back against the tide of condescension he had endured, transforming his perspective from beneath their critical gaze to someone who would command respect. But even as he pursued this fierce ambition, moments of self-doubt crept in. Would they take his work seriously? Would they dismiss him once more, reducing him to a ghost that swept the floors? Joshua grappled with the enormity of it all. A warrior's legacy demanded a warrior's spirit. But did he have it in him? With the proposal written, he knew he needed allies. Josh mustered the resolve to approach a familiar face, a professor who had shown glimpses of respect. Their previous sharing had left impressions, small sparks beneath the turmoil. During one late afternoon, he caught Professor Hunt in the hallway, his heart pounding like a war drum, ready to challenge the specter of judgment that loomed around them. "Professor Hunt," he began, his voice wavering yet resolute. "Can we talk?" The professor turned, raising an eyebrow as he saw Josh's determined expression. But before the conversation could blossom, an unexpected distraction emerged. His phone buzzed in his pocket. The message that lit up the screen drew attention away from the meeting he had desperately sought, igniting a panic in Josh. It was from his mother's doctor. "Meet me at the hospital. We need to discuss your mother's condition." The world shifted on its axis. Everything had changed in the blink of an eye, and now, priority took on a terrifying new form. Would he be able to wrestle this new crisis while still honoring the promise he made to himself? The call to action pressed on his heart, but the path was becoming convoluted. Could he find a way to balance both duty and aspiration, or would he once again have to retreat to the shadows, leaving history waiting for him to finally step into the light? Josh felt the weight of the world pressing against his chest as he stood frozen in the hallway, the phone still vibrating furiously in his hand. He couldn't shake off the urgency taut in the air. His mother's health was at stake. Yet, the flickering flame of his aspirations begged for acknowledgement, a dance of devotion to two opposing realities that hammered at the gates of his heart and mind. "I can't do this," he muttered under his breath, feeling the familiar pull of despair creeping into his thoughts. But inside, beneath the swell of panic lay a resolute flicker of determination. His mother had always been the cornerstone of his strength, fiercely encouraging his academic pursuits, having sacrificed so much for his education. This weight was a lot for anyone, yet, as he embraced it, clarity began seeping through the cracks of his uncertainty. In that moment, Josh imagined his great-great-grandfather, the warrior who had stood tall against insurmountable odds. He reminded himself of those moments in the archives, the stories of resilience pouring through the pages, and it bolstered a newfound conviction. Perhaps what he needed to do wasn't to choose between duty and ambition, but to understand that each could fuel the other. With purpose coursing through his veins, he made a swift decision. He would go to the hospital first, confronting this heart-wrenching uncertainty head-on. But he wouldn't abandon his proposal. In fact, he would use this experience as a source of inspiration. He needed to articulate how vulnerability can coexist with resolve, how battles could be fought on multiple fronts. His desire to elevate his mother's legacy in academia could thrive amidst this turmoil. The hospital waiting room felt like a different universe. The antiseptic smell pierced through his senses as he sat stiffly on the plastic chair, every minute dragging like hours. He picked up a stack of old magazines, attempting to distract himself, but his mind wandered back to his mother, fragile, yet full of fighting spirit. When the doctor emerged, Josh leapt up, heart racing and palms clammy. "Mr. Delaney, thank you for coming," the doctor began solemnly, and Josh braced himself as the words poured out, heavy with implications. They discussed treatment options and prognosis, and with every sentence, a part of Josh grappled with the imminent reality of loss. Yet, upon seeing his mother's frail form a few moments later, lying in a sterile hospital bed, he felt resolve crystallize around his fear. "Mom," he whispered, squeezing her hand. "I promise I won't quit on you. I'm working on something important." Her eyes sparkled with understanding, affirming the unspoken bond they shared, a legacy of purposed lives. This moment ignited a passion in Josh, and the weight shifted. He was more than just a caretaker, he was her son, a beacon for her strength. Later that evening, back in the solitude of his dimly lit apartment, he slumped at his desk, thoughts racing. The pages of his proposal blended with the memories of his mother's unwavering words of encouragement. The ebb of doubt that had clouded him began to fade. He could approach Professor Hunt tomorrow, armed not just with notes but with the power of resilience and vulnerability interwoven within his words. The promise of legacy pulsed anew, shining brighter than it ever had before. This was a twofold battle. If he could channel his emotions into purpose, perhaps he could carve out a space where both duty and ambition could thrive. As he typed the final lines of his proposal, a new thought broke through the haze. What if he wasn't just fighting for his own legacy, but for his mother's as well? The revelation hung in the air, heavy with potential, a strong pivot that could redefine everything he had worked for. The moment of action beckoned, and he felt a surge of courage knitting through him. "I'm ready to take on both challenges." But as he prepared to rest, the buzzer of his phone chimed again, drawing his focus to an unexpected text that sent an electric thrill through him, prompting him to wonder. Was this message merely good luck, or did it herald a complication he had yet to face? Josh stared at the phone, pulse quickening at the sight of the message. His mind danced between curiosity and anxiety. Could this text be a distraction, or an opportunity shrouded in ambiguity? Reluctantly, he thumbed the screen, revealing a brief message from an unknown number. "I have something to discuss with you. It's about your mother." His heart sank momentarily, uncertainty flooding his senses. What did they know? Why reach out now? This single message felt like a delicate thread that could unravel the fabric of their world. Suddenly, he felt the weight he had lifted earlier pressing down again, dark clouds rolling in to obscure his newfound clarity. In the hours that followed, sleep eluded him as he wrestled with thoughts. The uncertainty gnawed at him, demanding attention and swiping away his resolve. The time he had reserved for refining his proposal became haunted by the need for answers, and by dawn, he'd made a decision: he would meet this unknown person. Josh arrived at the coffee shop, skin prickling as he scanned the room for any signs of the mystery messenger. Was it someone connected to his mother, or perhaps a stranger lurking in the periphery of an already strained reality? He felt as though each step was a prelude to facing a daunting truth. When a figure emerged from the shadows, Josh felt his breath hitch. It was an older woman, tracing the familiar contours of his mother's features, time-scarred and seasoned yet warm. Her eyes held stories untold, a universe of both sorrow and perseverance. "Josh," she began gently. "I'm Amelia, your mother's childhood friend." Recognition struck him like a bolt of lightning, illuminating a background he hadn't fully appreciated. The warmth of connection sparked amidst the apprehension swirling in his chest. They exchanged small talk, but Josh sensed the urgency brimming just beneath the surface. "I've been meaning to reach out," Amelia finally admitted, a tremor of resolve lacing her voice. "Your mother doesn't want you to worry, but she needs help. There are things from her past that you should know, things that may impact her recovery." The air around him thickened with unasked questions. What past? What needed to be revealed? Each word became a thread, weaving a narrative that had been hidden away, folding into the long shadows of familial expectations and silent sacrifices. "I know how much you want to focus on your future," Amelia continued, gauging his reaction. "But understanding your mother's legacy could strengthen you. It's not just about fighting for her, it's about embracing who she was and what she has fought through." As Amelia spoke, Josh's thoughts tumbled into focus. A cascade of images of his mother filled his mind, the sacrifices she had made for her education, the relentless pursuit of knowledge, the quiet moments of celebration for him. This urgency to learn about her past suddenly turned into a pathway to explore what he was truly fighting for. He spent the following days haunted by their conversation. He thought about what legacy meant, not just as a burden dragging him down but a spark igniting a new sense of identity. His proposal was no longer just a professional endeavor but emulated the strength of the generations that had threaded through his life. That evening, lit by a new resolve, he rewrote parts of his proposal, illuminating his understanding of vulnerability as strength. Honoring his mother's narrative would deepen his own story, intertwining their legacies into one profound message. Yet, as he returned to the coffee shop days later, searching for Amelia's presence, the seat remained empty. No phone call. No follow-up message. Anxiety resurged with the intensity of unanswered questions choking every breath. What lay beyond the revelations? He needed answers, and they demanded investigation. The lingering thought that perhaps this could define more than just his journey echoed relentlessly. Was he ready for what true understanding could expose? The stakes were higher than ever, pushing him closer to the edge of his personal battlefield. As Josh stepped out into the overwhelming city streets, an unsettling realization dawned that this was only the beginning of his path, one that could lead him to profound truths or difficult confrontations within both his family's legacy and his own ambitions. Josh navigated the crowded city streets, each step heavy with anticipation for what lay ahead. The message from Amelia lingered in his mind, intertwining with the echoes of his mother's sacrifices and the urgent call to action it had sparked. Clarity began to form around his thoughts. He needed to dig deeper into this enigmatic legacy she had hinted at, and the absence of follow-up communication only solidified his resolve. That afternoon, he found himself standing outside the modest building that housed the local library. Entranced yet apprehensive, he crossed the threshold, drawn into the hushed realm of history, knowledge, and unanswered questions. He recognized that within those walls lay fragments of the past he desperately sought to piece together. Hours drifted by as he pored over ledgers, newspapers, and personal accounts that chronicled the lives of those who had come before him. Each entry resonated with snippets of his mother's childhood, friendships, and struggles. Finding Amelia's initials in a list of volunteers for community engagements ignited a mix of pride and unease. It symbolized the connectivity that defined their existence, yet also showcased how little he knew. Among the disjointed memories, one story caught his attention. A local charity that had long since faded from public memory, driven by strong women during hard times, women who fought not only for their own identities but for their families, communities, and the very futures of the next generation. As Josh read, he felt the rising tide of determination wash over him. His mother had been a part of something bigger, and he would not allow that story to remain buried. The search launched him into a frenzy of inquiry, propelling him toward the records office and then to the neighborhood where his mother had grown up. Each conversation with aging residents unveiled a different shade of his mother's multifaceted past, stories whispered in reverence, devoid of awareness yet bubbly with affection. He began to realize how her struggles had sculpted not only his own sense of identity, but also defined their family narrative, each triumph and failure woven into a larger historical fabric. As days turned into weeks, he found himself engulfed in this unexpected journey. The more he learned, the more he began to connect his own aspirations with the legacy that history had bestowed upon him. The vision he had for his professional life transformed into a mission. He would not simply chase success for its own sake. Driven by the weight of compassion and empathy, he saw himself further entwined in the socio-cultural movement born from his mother's era. However, with knowledge came the creeping knowledge of resistance. During a lunch meeting with colleagues tasked to review his proposal, Josh felt their skepticism aggravate his insecurities, their minds entrenched in a conventional understanding of business devoid of heart. "You're looking too far back, Josh," one of them argued, an edge clear in his voice. "This is a pitch, not a history lesson." Frustration bubbled beneath the surface as he wrestled with his values. Was he willing to forfeit parts of his mission to fit into a more palatable mold? No, he thought vehemently. His aim was to bring forth a message firmly rooted in the past and projected toward the future. That afternoon, while sitting on a bench in the park, the sun silhouetting the skyline, he scribbled furiously on a napkin. His proposal would not simply delineate fiscal outcomes or market forecasts, it would breathe life into a narrative that called for understanding and accountability. A business that honored legacy, empowered communities, and wove compassion into its model. But as he penned his convictions, a knot of uncertainty tightened in his gut. Would corporate environments truly embrace this approach? Would they dismiss his vision, deeming it impractical? The shadow of his colleagues' doubt lingered, and he knew the true confrontation lay ahead not just with them, but within himself. As Josh prepared for the forthcoming pitch to potential investors, a thought resonated, a challenge issuing from within. This would not merely be a test of his business acumen, it was a call to defend a family legacy against those who might overlook its inherent value. The time had come, he realized, to face not only the external hurdles that awaited him but the internal battles ignited by doubts. His resolve crystallized, the moment he had been building toward had finally arrived. Would he rise to honor his mother's legacy, or relinquish the promise he felt growing within? The outcome glittered on the horizon, but uncertainty persisted like a haze. As Josh stepped back into the fray of professional ambition, he could not shake the thought, what truths might he uncover if he truly leaned into the legacy struggling to be heard? The pitch day arrived, an event that felt monumental yet surreal. The morning sun poured through the tall glass windows of the conference room, illuminating the sleek presentations and meticulously arranged materials. Yet, as Josh organized his notes and paced the floor, clarity seemed replaced by a whirlpool of doubt. Each step he took echoed a counterpoint to the resolve he had held onto so tightly. The words he had painstakingly crafted felt fragile, like a glass sculpture molded by heat but susceptible to cracks. He settled into his seat as the first few investors entered, their eyes scanning the room with a passive intensity. Josh's heart quickened, memories of his mother flooding his mind, the late-night conversations steeped in lessons of resilience and purpose. He wiped his sweaty palms against his pants, grappling with the weight of expectation, both external and self-imposed. As he began his presentation, the nerves almost stifled him. He spoke of corporate responsibility, community engagement, and the pressing need for empathy in business. His story, a patchwork of historical accounts woven with present ambitions, started to weave itself into a tapestry that connected the past with the present. But as he turned to the slide showcasing his vision for the organization, he noticed skeptical expressions morph into dismissive smiles among some investors. "Josh," one investor interjected sharply, "this is all very noble, but we need to see the bottom line. Your approach, it's just not realistic." The word stung. He could feel the walls of validation beginning to close in, trapping him in a moment of vulnerability. With every critical glance, the fire of his determination flickered, battling against the tide of disbelief. His vision felt urgent, prophetic even, yet here he was, standing at the cusp of rejection. Taking a deep breath, Josh paused, gathering the threads of his thoughts. This wasn't just about a business proposal, it was about legacy, empowerment, and the refusal to give in to the status quo. "I believe there is an inherent value in our history that can redefine our future," he declared, his voice steadying with growing conviction. "The strength of women like my mother shaped the foundations of communities, and when we honor that legacy, we don't just uplift the past, we build something sustainable for the future." The room was silent as he let the implications hang in the air, the sincerity of his words contrasting starkly with the financial rhetoric that usually dominated discussions. He sensed a breakthrough was near, but could he hold on to this momentum without falling into the pit of doubt? Each second felt like an eternity, and the investors exchanged glances that threatened to either affirm or demolish his resolve. As the meeting dragged on, Josh weathered their questions, asserting the relevance of his mission amid their skepticism. Yet deep within, unease gnawed at him like an insistent pit bull. Would he truly be able to blend these noble ideals with tangible profitability? Or had he embarked on a fool's errand, romanticizing a legacy that risked being trampled by market pressures? After what felt like hours of probing, the meeting wrapped up. Josh stood, heart racing, and offered a shaky but confident farewell. He stepped out of the room, closing the door behind him, yet felt an immediate emptiness wash over him. The responses he received were lukewarm, and relief wasn't the sensation he craved. Instead, new questions burned within. Had he lost the vital connection to his family legacy in his pursuit for acceptance? Did adhering to his vision cost him the credibility he desperately sought? Would the sacrifices made by his mother ultimately be overshadowed by the profit margins he was expected to chase? Josh wandered the hallway, uncertainty coiled tightly around him. This was just the beginning of a struggle that now seemed both terrifying and exhilarating, a path to self-discovery laden with professional reckoning, one that would challenge every fiber of his being. As night fell and the city lights began to twinkle, Josh realized something crucial. Without understanding his own worthiness in fighting this battle, he would never be able to carry forth his mother's legacy. The true conflict now awaited him. How was he to confront not only the industry's expectations but the shadows of his inner critic, urging him to conform? With that revelation simmering within, he turned to exit the building, determined to reclaim his narrative. The weight of expectations felt heavier, but the path to honor his mother's contributions to a more profound purpose was clearer than ever. What awaited him on this road to self-affirmation, he wondered. And would the legacy he sought to uphold blossom into his own transformation? Walking out of the conference building, Josh was met with a brisk night breeze that instantly chilled the sweat clinging to his shirt. Rather than walk in a straightforward manner, he found himself wandering the streets, seeking clarity among the cacophony of thoughts swirling in his mind. He replayed every moment from the pitch, each interaction etching deeper into his psyche. He pondered whether the investor's skepticism stemmed from fear, ignorance, or perhaps something else entirely. A realization struck him: he had spent so much time trying to mold his vision into something palatable for them, that he neglected to fully embrace its essence. The truth resided not in bottom lines or return on investments, but rather in the resilience and spirit of the very legacy he was championing. Frustration bubbled within him. How could he articulate that passion in a world dominated by numbers? He found himself seated on a bench overlooking a river, the water reflecting the twinkling city lights, each flicker a mirage of hope. Without thinking, he pulled out his notebook and started scribbling notes, not just on what he wanted to present next, but more importantly, on who he was and what drove him. He wrote about his mother's voice, her laughter, the warmth of her presence. In those moments, the words flowed like a dam finally giving way. Empathy is not a weakness, he wrote fiercely. He underlined it multiple times, recognition dawning on him. Perhaps he needed to appeal to something more profound than pure financial gain, an emotional connection that would resonate with like-minded individuals and investors who valued purpose as much as profit. The idea sparked a change in his mindset. He began to think about who he wanted to connect with, rather than who he wanted to convince. He couldn't change the investor's perception overnight, but he could change how he positioned his narrative. Challenge accepted. With refreshed vigor, Josh envisioned hosting a series of intimate workshops that would delve into uncovering personal and organizational legacies. It wasn't just about him, it was about others finding the courage to express their stories, to engage in meaningful discussions about their values and how those shaped their professional paths. Perhaps he could create a movement, a communal recognition of stories that went beyond just transactions. His heart raced as he mapped out potential topics and speakers, imagining the dialogue that could emerge. He scribbled possible names for the initiative, each word a step away from self-doubt and a leap toward community engagement. It dawned on him that he didn't need the validation of traditional investors if he could build something more authentic from the ground up. As he closed his notebook, a challenging thought emerged. What if his initial vision wasn't flawed, but not realized in the right context? Could he align his professional goals with the values he held? It seemed a fine line to walk, yet one he was ready to explore. He stood up, invigorated by the possibilities. Taking a deep breath, he decided to reach out to a couple of former mentors who had first-hand experience marrying business with impact. It would be his first step toward gaining insight and mentorship to pilot this new direction. Yet, as he walked toward his apartment, a lingering concern settled in. The industry would require proof. But what proof could he offer beyond his convictions? The pressure to validate his evolving objective felt as daunting as before, a reminder of the very shadows he intended to overcome. Tomorrow, he would begin outlining a presentation to those mentors, shaping not just the structure of his ideas but the core of who he aspired to become. Yet the question persisted, would they understand his vision? Would they support a framework built on legacy and transformation, or would he find himself back at square one, pleading for acceptance? Determined to answer that question, Josh quickened his pace, ready to confront whatever uncertainties lay ahead. How he would navigate the fine line between authenticity and market expectations remained to be seen. But one thing was clear: this was just the start of a larger journey that demanded both courage and resilience. The next steps beckoned, and the stakes felt higher than ever. Would he find the balance between the personal and the professional, or would this incursion into new territory expose him to greater challenges? The morning sun pierced through the dusty blinds of Josh's apartment, flooding the room with a sharp light that stirred him from a restless sleep. He rolled over, the remnants of last night's revelations still twinkling on the edge of his consciousness. As he swung his legs over the bed, the thrill of newfound clarity twisted with the weight of uncertainty. Today was pivotal. He moved through his morning routine with mechanical precision, each action overshadowed by the looming presentation to his mentors. He couldn't shake the churning doubt that seemed to echo in the corners of his mind. Could he truly convey the essence of his vision? Would they see past the blinders of profit and loss? Walking to the cafe down the street, he rehearsed his pitch in his head. It was a comforting exercise, a way to channel the anxiety gripping him. He established the core tenets: legacy, empathy, and the profound impact of personal stories on professional paths. The cafe was bustling with morning patrons, their laughter and conversation contrasting sharply with the internal monologue swirling within him. As he sipped his coffee, he glanced around, observing individuals absorbed in their own worlds. Each person carried a narrative built from experiences he could only imagine. This realization brewed something deeper within him, a burning desire to elicit those stories, to create a framework for connection. But doubts still lurked. What if his mentors weren't receptive? What if they dismissed his writing as idealistic nonsense? He shook off the negativity, scolding himself for clinging to fear. Today, he was the architect of his destiny, not a passive participant. By the time he reached his mentor's office, he felt a mix of anticipation and dread. The sleek, modern building loomed over him, a palpable representation of the corporate world he sought to redefine. As he stood in the elevator, he took a deep breath, tapping into the reservoir of courage he had unearthed last night. The air was suffocating, but he refused to yield to it. Entering the conference room, he found his mentors waiting, their expressions a blend of curiosity and concern. Their presence intensified the stakes. He was stepping onto a stage vulnerable yet determined. "Thanks for meeting with me," he said, struggling to veil the tremor in his voice. The formalities faded as he launched into his presentation, fueled by an urgency to connect. He articulated his vision: workshops that unearthed the value of personal stories and transformed professional landscapes. He leaned into the theme of legacy and the emotional investments that underpinned real success. As he spoke, the initial flickers of skepticism morphed into intrigue. The nods from his mentors were subtle yet empowering, captivating him further. He could see their mental gears turning, the initial doubts cracking into raw possibility. What happens when people are encouraged to share their narratives? One mentor interjected. A spark ignited in Josh. They find their purpose. They redefine their roles in their organizations, he responded, his confidence building. The conversation flowed seamlessly, morphing into a genuine dialogue where he felt seen not just as an entrepreneur, but as a fellow human being navigating the complexities of ambition and identity. As the meeting drew to a close, one mentor asked, "How will you measure success?" This question resonated like a bell tolling in the back of his mind. He had deliberately avoided quantifying his passion so far. The statement reflected his deeper understanding that impact wasn't purely numerical but relational and transformative. His answer was instinctive. Success will be the stories we elicit and the paths we illuminate for others, he declared, his voice steadier than before. When he left the office, a torrent of mixed emotions surged within him, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Did he just lay the groundwork for something meaningful? Could legacy truly intertwine with professional growth? Yet, as he walked back home, a shadow of doubt loomed. Success was one thing, but maintaining momentum would demand more than a successful presentation. He needed to compel others to embrace this journey alongside him. What were the next steps? The path to alignment felt obscured, but one thing was clear: he had only just begun to scratch the surface of this new reality. Would he have the resolve to carry this vision into the world and confront the challenges that lay ahead? The city pulsed around Josh as he walked home, each step echoing the surge of possibility interwoven with fear. The initial triumph of his presentation gave way to the pressing questions rushing through his mind. What did success look like beyond those walls? How could he craft a narrative strong enough to hold others' attention, to invoke their passions? His phone buzzed in his pocket, jarring him from his thoughts. It was a message from Sarah, a fellow entrepreneur and confidant. "Hey! Let's catch up tonight. I want to hear all about your meeting." The thought of sharing his revelations excited him but also filled him with apprehension. The need to articulate his vision to someone who understood the nuance of ambition sent a fresh wave of anxiety through him. What if Sarah's response revealed the shortcomings he had yet to see? Would simplicity still resonate? Arriving at his apartment, he was met by a familiar silence, a stark contrast to the excitement of the earlier meeting. After pouring himself a glass of water, he sat at his desk, reviewing his notes. Each word was a reminder of the risks placed on the table. Was he ready to invite others into this vision? He envisioned the workshops a space where vulnerability met empowerment, where stories transformed corporate culture. The idea bloomed brightly, yet shadows danced at its edges, whispering fears of inadequacy. As he prepared for his conversation with Sarah, he found himself reflecting not just on his vision, but the underlying motivations driving him. It wasn't merely about professional growth, it was about human connection. What he sought was to revolutionize how people communicated their identity in the workplace. In a world fixated on metrics and outcomes, could he cultivate deeper conversations that emphasized empathy? The sun slipped below the horizon, casting long shadows in his room when Sarah knocked on the door. Her energy unfurled like a bright banner, instantly dissipating some of the tension coiled in his chest. They settled on the couch, the atmosphere familiar and welcoming. "I'm dying to know, how did it go?" she asked, a mix of eagerness and genuine curiosity lighting her eyes. Josh began to recount the meeting, his words shaping his experience into a cohesive narrative. As he spoke, he could see her react, nods of understanding, furrowed brows of contemplation, moments when his vision sparked a light in her. And then they asked how I would measure success. It hit me, Sarah's success isn't just about heavy data, it's about weaving those stories into our professional fabric. He paused, reflecting on the implications. But now, I'm grappling with how to keep the momentum going. How do I bring others into this narrative? Sarah leaned forward, her expression serious. You have to challenge the norm, Josh. People often cling to old paradigms, so your next challenge is to invite them to question their own narratives. The workshops are just the beginning. You need to create a community that thrives on these stories. A thought flickered in Josh's mind: could he bridge the gap between individual stories and collective growth? But what if they resist? What if they clamor for statistics and certainty? Then you offer them a taste of transformation. Share your own story, your fears, your journey. When they see your authenticity, they'll be more willing to follow you into this new space. As the conversation unfolded, Josh felt a surge of inspiration. He recognized Sarah's challenge pushed him further than he had intended to go. It was no longer just about designing a framework but about immersing himself and others within a transformative dialogue that honored human experiences. By the time their conversation ended, Josh embraced a new understanding. He would need to expose his authentic self, creating pathways for others to share theirs. Building this legacy wouldn't come without confrontation. It required diving into the unknown, embracing vulnerability, and standing firm against skepticism. As he walked her to the door, energy still crackling between them, he could almost visualize the impact he sought. But as his thoughts raced ahead, a sobering reality flooded in. What would he do if he faced direct opposition? If his mentors began to question his vision further? His confidence teetered on the brink of resolve and doubt. The time had come to face the immediate aftermath of his decisions, to not only challenge external perceptions but also to tackle the internal ones still lurking within him. What repercussions would arise when he began to manifest this vision, and who would stand in his way? The dawn arrived golden and bright, illuminating Josh's apartment and the promise of a new day. He awoke with a sense of clarity, the swirling doubts from yesterday replaced by purposeful determination. The recent conversations with Sarah had crystallized his understanding. He needed to not only embrace his vision but to embody it with authenticity. Today was the day to launch those workshops. He opened his laptop and began drafting an announcement, a compelling invitation that would resonate with others seeking connection and meaning within their professional lives. Are you ready to redefine your legacy? He typed, his fingers dancing across the keys with eagerness. Join me in a journey of storytelling that empowers us to connect on a deeper level. As he outlined the framework for the first workshop, the vision took shape. He would facilitate discussions around individual narratives, fostering a supportive atmosphere where vulnerability became a tool for growth. He envisioned sharing his own story, the weight of familial responsibility, the struggles, and the eventual emergence of his purpose. With every word he crafted, Josh felt an undeniable shift. He was no longer standing on the sidelines of his life, but stepping into the forefront. The momentum built within him, a tidal wave of hope washing away lingering fears. He secured a local community center for the workshops and, after hitting send on the announcement, took a moment to breathe deeply. Just then, his phone buzzed with notifications. His heart raced as the first registrants began to roll in. Curiosity, support, and anticipation flooded his screen. Encouraged by the palpable interest, he felt emboldened to reach out to more peers, inviting them to share their stories and experiences. This wasn't merely an endeavor, it was a movement. The day of the first workshop arrived, bustling with energy and a touch of nerves. The community center vibrated with chatter as participants trickled in, each carrying their own tales woven from triumphs and challenges. Josh stood at the front, flanked by a welcome board labeled "Embracing Our Legacies." The room held a mixture of familiar faces and newcomers, each story promising to add depth to the dialogue. "Welcome, everyone," he began, his voice steady, eliciting immediate attention. "Today, we're here to explore the stories that shape our professional and personal lives. We'll dive into what legacy means to each of us, and how we can transform these narratives into a source of empowerment." As he engaged with the participants, encouraging them to share snippets of their histories, he noticed something remarkable. The air was infused with connection. The vulnerability shared in the room curled around them like a warm embrace. Each voice uncovered another layer of human experience, a testament to the strength forged through shared journeys. Josh's heart swelled as he listened. Stories flowed about sacrifices made, lessons learned, and paths forged in adversity. With each contribution, he felt his own narrative resonating, intertwining with the room's collective pulse. Halfway through the workshop, he took a step back, surveying the interactions. He had managed to create something genuinely profound. These individuals were not just participants, they were co-creators of a shared experience. "Your stories matter," he reminded them earnestly. "When we speak our truths, we empower ourselves and others. We challenge norms that seek to silence us." In that moment, an unexpected wave of realization washed over him. This wasn't merely about professional development, it was about healing, opportunity, and mutual growth. He had become the vessel that was lifting their legacies from obscurity into the light. As the workshop concluded, participants lingered, exchanging contact information and expressing gratitude for the safe space he had nurtured. Josh felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment sweep over him. This was not just a culmination of events, it was a burgeoning legacy, a ripple effect created from an authentic desire to connect, challenge, and uplift. Days turned to weeks, each workshop gaining traction and drawing more attendees. Josh found himself not only facilitating these gatherings but also forging bonds that inspired deeper discussions. He gathered testimonials from participants, showcasing how the workshops allowed them to acknowledge their challenges as integral parts of their stories. Meanwhile, his mentors began to approach him again, this time, their interest held a different tone. They sought him out for insights into leading with empathy and the relevance of individual narratives in corporate strategy. Financial discussions shifted toward exploring emotional connections, demonstrating a palpable cultural shift. And just as he had hoped, investors began to take note, intrigued by the emerging movement that burgeoned around legacy and purpose. Each conversation morphed into an invitation for collaboration, creating external validation for the labor of love that had sprung from his desire to honor his mother's sacrifices. One afternoon, as Josh reviewed a collaboration proposal from a venture capital firm embracing his mission, he paused to reflect. He had traversed an extraordinary journey from janitor to architect of a movement that embraced narratives of legacy and transformation. The obstacles he had faced, both internal and external, had served to fortify his resolve. During the next workshop, he stood before the group, his heart marshalling immense pride. "We've built something powerful here together," he declared with conviction. "Each of your stories not only matters, they are shaping a future that goes beyond us. Together, we stand as warriors of our legacies." With each resounding voice that followed, Josh's journey crystallized into something far greater than individual ambitions. It became a testament to the human spirit's ability to rise, connect, and transform against overwhelming odds. In the end, Josh not only reclaimed his ancestral legacy but also established his own, a legacy marked by authenticity, empathy, and a relentless drive to foster connection among individuals. Armed with solid confidence and recognized competence, he had achieved something profound, honor not only for his family but a space for many to find and elevate their voices within the tapestry of their histories. His journey felt fulfilled, yet deeply satisfying, and he understood now that this was just a beginning. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for these inspiring narratives. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Comment your reactions and theories about how Josh transformed his life.